time for Expert Alert, your chance to ask questions and get answers from experts.
Good morning and thanks for joining us here on WLOX's Expert Alert. We're here every Thursday talking to the experts. Now, if you're not joining us on Facebook, we are streaming live on Facebook right now. So if you'd like to ask questions of our expert today, join us here on our Facebook page and then put your question down here in the comments. And then we will give them over to our expert today, Jody Entrekin from Entrekin Insurance. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Seems that we have lived through the termite swarms. I haven't seen them as wild the last few nights. They don't typically last a long time, usually like the week before, the week after Mother's Day. I feel like we've gotten through that storm. Only to begin.
Last night, I think I went through about 817,000. I literally washed my truck twice this morning.
Oh, well, so I live closer to the coastline than you do. So maybe the further north you get, the more intense it gets. I'm not really sure. I noticed a week and a half ago, I had the sunroof open because it wasn't as bad at night. And I get to the stoplight at Pass Road in Eisenhower. And I was like, and I looked up and I saw the lights and it was just thousands. I was like, oh, close it. So
turn them off.
Anyway, we digress. If you are getting out of that season, then unfortunately the sad news is you're about to get into another season. And that's hurricane season. Today's the 21st, which means there's 10 days left of pre-hurricane season. But they start tracking the tropics in May. So you've already been seeing that on television. We're kind of like lulling you into submission. If you're not from here and you live here now, June 1st to November 30th. It's the end of November now, right? I remember it used to be when I was young, it was June 1st to November 1st. Now it's through November 30th, is hurricane season. We didn't have a single storm, even in the Gulf last year, which was weird. I don't know if I've ever been alive and recalled that.
You jinxed us.
Hey, listen, I knocked on wood. I saved our jinx. But that doesn't matter because it really only takes one storm to ruin your day. And you want to make sure that you are covered that way in the unlikely event that something were to happen. It's there when you need it. So today, we're talking about insurance. Shocker, right?
Yes, sir.
So what kind of concerns do you need to be thinking about? What do you need to be going over right now as we're getting close to the beginning of the season?
I mean, there's a lot of things, to go over. And I just want to start off by saying, once again, this is just advice. It's nothing legal. This is just advice, for me to give you. Beginning of hurricane season, look at your policies. Call your insurance agent and please ask them questions. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Know your policy. Also go outside in your yard, clean up. Get some of that debris that's out there just out of the way, because that will help mitigate any further damages. But the best advice I can give anyone, period, is call your agent and ask questions, because you would be surprised how many people assume, oh, I have my insurance policy. Since we're talking about hurricane season, let's say a homeowner's policy. It covers everything. Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, no, it does not. First thing you spoke about right off the bat was termites. So let's talk about that dirty word. Your homeowner's policy does not cover termite damage. I want to say that again. It does not cover your termite damage. So please look into that. That's why they say when the termites, are swarming, turn the lights off outside. I don't want to invite them in. It's the last thing that I want to do. But you want to understand your policy. You want to look at your policy and make sure, that you actually have the coverage that you believe that you have. Because I hear it every single day in my profession. Oh, I have coverage for this. And I have to tell them, no, you don't. I can show you. Here's where you don't. Read not just the policy, but look at the endorsements page on your policy. That is vital, and nobody ever looks at it. Ask yourself, have you ever read your insurance policy? It's a good, legitimate question, right? It's the most boring thing that you're ever going to read.
And you're paying for it.
Yes, sir. You're paying dearly for it, right? So your insurance policy is going to cover and protect, chances are, what could be your largest investment other than yourself. Okay? So let's look at it. Let's look at your declaration pages. Your declaration pages, that is a summary of the coverage that you have. You know, part of your declaration pages, you're going to see what's called endorsements. An endorsement is any change to your policy. An endorsement is not just something that they add, it's any change that could have been made to that policy. Look at those endorsements. Here's what people are seeing. If we look at in the past, recently, what has happened? Claims. Oh my gosh, the claims. Ladies and gentlemen, the claims that have been filed here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast is insane. Hail damage. Everyone had it. You know, all of a sudden, everyone had hail damage. Now these policies are changing because there is such a high volume of claims. Look at your policy. When you think that you have a replacement cost policy, look and see, is your roof replacement cost? Vast majority of the companies are not offering that right off the bat. You have to pay an additional funds for that. Now, when I tell someone, hey, I can give you this, but it's going to cost you an extra $100, 1 out of 10 is saying, okay, because people look at one thing and one thing only. What's it going to cost me? That's what they're focusing on. My intent here with this, show is to educate you. Sometimes during the course of an education, you hear things that you don't like. And that's okay. I don't like it either, because I have homeowners insurance that I have to pay. I don't like what I have to pay for mine. But I would rather pay for it and have it protected, because that $15 that you're paying for coffee could save you on the back end when you have a loss. So again, please, I cannot stress how important it is. Research your policy. Call your agent, ask questions. Do this before the storm happens.
You said that it doesn't cover termite damage. Can you buy something that does? Or is just, as a general rule, insurance just doesn't cover it? It's a deal breaker.
Again, this is advice. Most of them are no. I have a termite contract. My termite contract does not cover costs of repairs. Just because you have a termite contract doesn't mean you have it. There are steps that you have to take in order to get that. I am unaware of any place locally to where I can buy termite protection and they cover me for damages unless it was there from the beginning. When that structure was built, they have to treat it. They have to treat it during the laying of the slab, throughout the course of the construction. If you have everything cradle to grave, most of them, yes, at that point in time, will cover termite damage. But if you're buying something already in place, 9 times out of 10, it does not.
I mean, unless you
Ask
can prove
the questions.
they didn't service correctly. But then that gets into a whole legal conversation. That's a story for another day. So when
But again, it also comes down to the contract.
Right.
So the verbiage of the contract. Let's just say if someone
You're talking about with the
service,
person protecting your house from the pest control company. Is that what the termite company? Okay.
Yes, sir. But if you read that contract states 0 for repairs. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if they miss something. If it goes to court, the courts will side with what is within black and white. That's their fixation. That's where I'm trying to educate you. As parents, we don't like doing what we have to do to our children sometimes. We have to ground them, we have to get on to them, but we do it because we love them and we want what's best for them. That's what we're trying to do here. As licensed professionals, we're trying to educate you and inform you of what is best for your interest.
What is a common myth or misunderstanding about property insurance when it comes to hurricane season?
It covers flood, without question. It does not. People, you have to understand the definition of flood. A pipe that is inside your wall, okay, like a water pipe going through here, breaks and floods your house, right? That's terminology I hear all the time. Oh, my house is flooded, my bathroom's flooded. By definition, it's not flooded. You just have water damage, okay? Now, your policy could have limitations on water damage. Look at that as well. That's also within your policy. The definition of flood insurance, okay, well, the definition for flood insurance is an inundation of 2 or more acres of rising water. 2 or more acres of rising water. So a pipe breaking in the wall, busting and flooding out, just dumping massive amounts of water on the floor, that's not flood. Now, if you have 2 or more acres of rising water, now we have flood. Okay? So your homeowners does not cover flood. It does not. It does not cover everything like people thinks that it does. It does not. It's just like your health insurance. Does your health insurance cover your vision for new glasses? No, sir. Have to have vision insurance for that, right? There are policies for everything. However, your homeowners does cover a lot.
So it doesn't matter how that 2 acres of inundation happens, as long as it's 2 acres of inundation, that's considered a flood.
Of rising water, yes.
Okay. Good to know. Storm, hurricane, whatever, river floods, the whole nine. It's there. So now, with regard to flood insurance, that is something that you can take care of as well, or is that a different entity?
No, sir. No, we can do that at Entrekin Insurance as well. There's not a policy which I cannot assist you with. So whatever the policy is, if you need assistance with it, if you just want to know, hey, what do these numbers mean? How does this work? I'll be more than happy to help you. That's the whole purpose of this, is so that we can get this out and help individuals. And what I tell people quite often is, the worst time to learn that your policy doesn't cover something is when you need it. Because that's the only time that people think that their insurance policy is important, is when they need it. Like I say all the time, and I've said on this show before, people look at insurance like they do law enforcement officers as a whole. Nobody wants them around, right? Until they need them. When they need them, boy, they sure are glad they're there. Something happens, they're quick, right off the bat, let me call 911. They need that officer. Something happens at their house, whoa, I sure am glad I have my insurance, let me call them. But then they find out that deductible that they had of $2,500 is now 5% because they wanted to save $15 a month, right? So now they're saving $15 a month, but that deductible goes from $2,500 to $20,000.
When you get your homeowner's policy, do you have to add a wind provision on there, or does it just come with it?
It depends on the carrier. Some of them are automatic, it's coming with it. Some of them, that's an option that we could add, endorse onto the policy, or leave off of it. Then there are those that
just don't cover it.
Flat out just don't cover any wind at all.
Which has not always been the case.
That is correct.
Right.
Okay. A lot of things have changed, since the last big storm, in this area. Everyone talks about Katrina. There's been a lot of changes in the insurance world, since Katrina. Things have now been really honed in, and that's good for us as the consumer. We just want to make sure that we have, the proper thing in place.
Weather's changing. Weather's always changing, especially here. Weather will change today. It's like, if you don't like the weather, wait 20 minutes, you'll be fine. And that, because of that, you just literally said it yourself. Katrina kind of changed the scope of things. Before it was Katrina, it was Camille. That's just kind of how it works. When the new bar is set, everything else changes. So with regard to the fact that weather's constantly moving and evolving, things are getting drastically more expensive to build, to replace, things of that nature. Of course, insurance is going to change as well.
Yes.
And claims are also rapidly, I think claims are changing the insurance agency faster than weather.
No doubt. Because everything revolves around money. This policy, so I want to talk about a tornado policy as an example. I just recently searched, because we've had a lot of tornadoes come through recently, which we're not used to. Right now, the state of Mississippi is the second highest in the nation for confirmed tornadoes in 2026. Second highest in the nation. I want to say it's 43 tornadoes is what I saw. Actually, it said 43 to 48 tornadoes just in Mississippi, right? Tornadoes are covered on a standard homeowners or property policy if it includes wind. However, they also have, what I refer to as supplemental policies, or also known as tornado policies. And they cost $88. That's what they cost, $88. But with that, they pay you. Why is that now in place? Because it is a need. It is something that can help us. It's a change that, we didn't have to have something like this 10 years ago, but we have it now. Weather events that are changing, are changing insurance because things cost so much. Wow. Man, call a plumber. Look how much it costs for someone to come out there and replace your toilet today. It's a whole lot more expensive than it was 5 years ago. And it's just the cost of doing business across the board. Gas prices right now, we're all feeling it. I have to put gas in my truck when I leave here today. I might stop by the bank on the way and take out a loan. But it is what it is. And if we want proper coverage, we just have to pay for it and get it. However, I also understand you can only afford what you can afford. But what I cannot stress enough to the people, and again, I say this every single day, don't let your family suffer because you want that $15 cup of coffee, right? Sometimes we have to make a couple sacrifices to make sure that we have the proper coverage. Because Mother Nature doesn't care about your budget. Mother Nature doesn't care about what kind of insurance policy you have. Mother Nature doesn't care that you say, well, you know what? I'll get this next year. Mother Nature's coming, whenever she comes. And again, the best time to be prepared is before something happens. Just like what's the Boy Scout motto? Always be prepared. That's what we want to do. Always be prepared. Number one way that you can be prepared, knowledge. Be aware of it. And if you don't have that knowledge, that's okay. I know a guy. Everybody has a guy, right? So if you have your guy, call him. Hey, Jody, what does this mean? I'll tell you. I want you to know what these numbers mean. I want you to know how it works. So again, with hurricane season coming up, this happens every single year without fail. It's actually a joke that I talk about every time a storm is named. I immediately say, I wonder how many phone calls I'm going to get tomorrow for flood insurance. Because that's when people want flood insurance. Absolutely, I can sell you a flood insurance policy. But guess what? If there's no loan closing attached to it, there's a federal law 30-day wait. So if we have Hurricane Jody out here that they say is going to hit the Gulf Coast in 9 days and you call me up and you want flood insurance, sure, I can sell it to you. But it's not going to go into effect for 30 days after you pay for it. You have to pay for it, and 30 days later it goes into force. What do they say? Well, I won't need it then. That's what they say. I don't need it then. Be prepared before the event happens.
Yeah, listen, and that's because there's some usually restrictions when the storm is imminent, and there might be some options that you can benefit from that completely disappear once the storm forms. So you want to make sure that you're prepared before we're anywhere near the cone, right?
Yes.
If you're not from here, you'll catch on. The cone of uncertainty is kind of where they think maybe it will hit. So you want to make sure that you have that peace of mind before it's way too late to even be concerned about it. Again, he mentioned it. There are waiting periods, there are restrictions. You may have some benefits and options that completely disappear. So now is the time. Take a look at your policy. Talk to your guy, right? Talk to your guy or your girl, whoever it is. It doesn't matter as long as you talk to the person that can give you the answers to the questions. If you don't have that person, 460-0572 or 460-0574, entrekinins.com. If you don't know a guy, there's one here that can answer your questions. We didn't have any questions today, but look, that's fine. Give them a call, ask the questions, make sure that you're prepared and that you are covered because it's going to be a long season. Even
right.
We're not expecting anything. Let's just say that. We're hoping for nothing, but you need to plan for everything.
I tell
Jody.
you what, I don't want to see Jim Cantori.
Nobody does.
No.
On television is fine, but not on television anywhere near here.
That's right.
We don't want Jim Cantori in the landmass, right?
That's correct.
Jody, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us on this week's Expert Alert. We'll be back here, right back here next week with Justin Allen and E-Agent. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you for joining us for Expert Alert. We'll feature more experts at the same time next Thursday.